Hey everyone, today we're doing something a little bit different. The Roaring Knight fight at the end of Chapter 3 requires that you sort of defeat it in order to obtain the chapter's Shadow Crystal, and even with the advertised as important Shadow Mantle, this fight is still really difficult. So rather than just being another person posting a 4-minute video of my no-hit of this boss, instead, I'm going to subtly disguise my no-hit as a guide for the boss and teach you how you too can bully the Roaring Fraud. Before we get into it, the majority of my viewers are not subscribed to my channel. I'm trying to reach 400,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and every little bit helps. So if you want to support me so I can do more of this stuff, it only takes a moment. Thank you. Okay, so before we talk about the knight itself, let's talk about some equipment setups that I recommend. The first setup I'm going to recommend is what I've been using in the full game speedruns. This setup is powerful, easy to build, and doesn't require much from the previous chapters that you wouldn't already have. Additionally, it's just strong enough to defeat the knight before it starts using the most powerful moves that it has. It's also very easy to navigate and allows you to quickly beat the knight while also always defending with Chris and Ralsei. This is my recommended setup. Chris will be equipped with the Saber 10, a weapon from Chapter 3. This can be bought alongside Susie's Toxic Axe at this vending machine here for 80 points. Or if you're really low on points, you can only afford just one of the two. It can be obtained by talking to the rightmost curtain in the S rank room, though it's easier to use at the vending machine. Chris's armor is the Shadow Mantle and the Pink Ribbon. If you have the Twin Ribbon from Chapter 2, use that in place of the Pink Ribbon. However, the Pink Ribbon is obtained as an S rank reward from Ram for S ranking Board 1, which you're probably already doing anyway to get the Shadow Mantle, unless you did the Z rank strat. Pink Ribbon and Twin Ribbon were both given pretty harsh nerfs in Chapter 3 and 4 only, now giving an unstated minus 20% and minus 25% TP gain penalty, respectively. This really should be stated somewhere, especially since this nerf is not present in Chapter 2, but I digress. In this fight, the enhanced Graze box is so powerful that I still recommend it even with a nerf. Every strat can be done without it, but it just makes things a lot easier. It makes double grazing the cross slash attack really consistent and allows you to graze the sword corridors much more effectively and potentially even skip the end of the move if you get lucky and are able to graze enough. Shadow Mantle on Chris is contentious, but hear me out on this. Chris during this fight will act as both a defend TP generator for Susie, as well as your main item user since their damage is really bad without Susie and Ralsei being knocked down. You really want to maximize the damage Susie is doing with Rude Buster, which we'll get to in a second, and the Shadow Mantle just doesn't really do that. However, it provides a really useful safety net when on Chris, and lets them much more safely use revivements and other items to keep Susie up. One final thing is that if your other members are knocked out, Chris gains a huge damage buff and can almost do as much damage as Rude Buster does. This can be useful for clutching out the final turns if you just need a little bit more damage, but otherwise this should only be used as a very last resort. Susie's setup does use items from previous chapters. However, it's the secret boss items, which I'm going to assume you probably have if you're even attempting to get this particular Shadow Crystal. Susie's setup is the Toxic Axe, Jevil's Tail, and the Deal Maker. This provides very high damage Rude Busters, good protection, and is super easy to set up as it just requires the spare rewards from Jevil and Spamp them. Devil's Knife is a consideration for the lower cost of Rude Buster. However, I just don't recommend it. I think Jevil's Tail is just a better item all throughout the rest of the game, and I don't really recommend getting Devil's Knife just to use on this fight. But if you do have it, it can still work. Finally, Ralsei's weapon is the Ragger 2 from Chapter 2. However, Ralsei doesn't really attack that much in this fight, especially with the strategy I recommend for ease of clearing, so this doesn't matter much. For his armor, the knight does so much damage that defense doesn't really mean that much, so I just equip him with 2 lodestones, which you can buy from the green room vending machine. This helps offset the harsh nerf on the Pink Ribbon somewhat. This is the setup I personally use when fighting the knight, and it's what I recommend. I've seen some other setups that min-max, and you can do that if you're interested, but it's a lot more specific. The frayed bow tie and spike band from previous chapters are useful here for that purpose. Double Pink Ribbon, or Twin Ribbon and Pink Ribbon, is also an option, expanding the graze box even further, but really harshly impacting your TP. The nerf is additive, so this means almost 50% less TP than base if you're not using any lodestones. However, the expanded Graze box does make skipping the end of the sword corridor a little bit more consistent, and if you're attempting to no-hit this fight, you can slot it in over the Shadow Mantle since that's not doing anything if you're planning to not take any damage at all. Okay, now that we've covered the build, let's get into strategies. My strong recommendation is to follow this strategy, which is the one I perform in speedruns. If you're min-maxing your equipment, you can defeat the knight in less turns, but this is risky as you're always fighting and therefore leaving the characters not defending, and as such you take way more damage and get punished much harder for mistakes. With the recommended equipment setup I provided earlier, you can choose two options. Attacking with Chris and Ralsei and using Rudebuster with Susie can save one turn, but I don't recommend this just for trying to clear the fight. From the speedrun perspective, it's actually very slightly slower, but much more importantly, the turn you skip is actually a relatively simple attack and you're taking on way more risk for not much reward by not defending. If you're always fighting, you take way more damage from not defending and mistakes become that much more punishing. If you're explicitly going for a no-hit though, then this is totally fair game to get it over with in as few turns as possible. Here is the strategy I recommend. Turn 1, use Chris's Hold Breath Act. This gives you a soul speed buff for the entire fight. For those of you who have played Undertale, I often refer to this as Sans Soul Speed, as the Sans fight actually does this exact same thing and buffs your soul speed. Defend with the other two characters. If you're min-maxing, you may consider a Tension Gem item to Rudebuster here on turn 1. Again, I won't really be covering this strategy as I don't use it myself, and the Tension Gem is a little obtuse to obtain in this chapter while also getting all the S-rank rewards. And personally, I think the TP items are just better spent elsewhere, particularly for something like speedrunning, where they save minutes on the Chapter 4 fights. You'll also either have to forego Hold Breath or use it later into the fight and not have it for the first attack. However, that option is open if you're looking to do that, and it could potentially save a turn for you. Then, from turn 2 onwards, you will just defend with Chris, Rudebuster with Susie, and defend with Ralsei on all turns following. If you're grazing even remotely well, you should always be able to afford the Rudebuster, especially with the recommended lodestones on Ralsei. This strategy will do enough damage to defeat the knight just before it gets to its third cycle, which has the hardest versions of all the attacks, notably skipping the 3-way diagonal teeth attack, which I'm convinced was handcrafted by Satan himself because this attack is so difficult to dodge. An important note though is that you need to be doing pretty well on Susie's extra Rudebuster damage. In chapters 1 and 2, simply pressing Z or Enter at any point during the Rudebuster animation caused it to do extra damage. A lot of people just mashed for the bonus, including myself, and a lot of people also just saw me doing that and mimicked me. This was a bugged version of how it was supposed to work, and it has been updated in chapter 3. Again, mashing for extra damage does not work anymore in chapter 3 or 4. Now, you need to press Z or Enter just before the Rudebuster actually physically connects with the enemy. The timing isn't frame perfect, and I try to aim for right around here. If you're a bit early, don't worry, the damage ramps up, and the closer you get, you'll only miss out on a few points of damage at most. It is much better to be slightly early than late, which completely misses it. This damage bonus is very important on the knight specifically, as the way it works is that at max ramp up with the best timing, you gain a flat plus 30 damage that ignores defense or your own attack. On the knight, an enemy that takes very low damage, this is super valuable and makes up a lot of your damage, so make sure to always use it. Doing this strategy, if you performed it correctly, the knight should eventually do the cross slash move 2 times in a row and end the second one with the Sans spin cycle attack. Once this happens, you no longer need to attack. Instead, defend with all the characters or use this free turn to heal. The knight should start glowing and you'll immediately get another turn. There is a chance, if your damage done has been very specifically slightly low, that the knight will repeat the previous move here with the spin cycle at the end. If that happens, you just need to deal a tiny amount more damage and then everything progresses as normal. Defend again on the glowing turn and definitely make sure that you use the previous turn to heal up so that you can all be defended for the ultimate attack. Once the ultimate attack is over and you get your next turn, just select fight with everyone and any amount of damage will end the fight and you'll be the victor. Okay, so that's the strategy for the fight. Let's go over every single attack and how I recommend dodging it, and I can give you some pro tips from the mind of the guy who fought Sans for 9 hours straight. After all, you can only know exactly what to do, and it doesn't really help that much if you don't know how to dodge everything. Okay, so I've jumped into live commentary here because I find that it's just easier to explain the fight like this, where I can stop and pause and talk as I explain it. It's kind of difficult to write this stuff in a script, so we're just going to be live commentary while I explain how I personally go about dodging all of the different knight attacks. So the first attack up is this, the first move here. Some people are calling this Starstorm because it looks like PK Starstorm from Earthbound, but this one's pretty simple, right? Like, it might be more intimidating than you think, but the hitboxes are super generous here. Really, only the internal little white dot hits you. The little, like, bit on the edge doesn't usually hit you, so you can squeeze through a lot of gaps you don't necessarily think would hit you. Like, I'm not being hit here. Only, like, inside of this space are you going to be taking damage. So the projectiles look bigger than they actually are. Like, look how much I'm squeezing through all of those while grazing them. So it's really only the white bits in the middle that you need to worry about. And then as the attack closes, all you want to do as the projectiles are coming back is you just want to find a space that's away from everything so you don't get overwhelmed. In this case, this area is big enough and I just sit in it and I can very confidently, like, those projectiles are just never even going to really reach me. So pretty simple attack to dodge. It's definitely the knight's easiest attack, I think. So it's one of the easier ones, and you can graze. As you see, I have a lot of TP from that. You actually only need about 34, because defending gives you 16, and that's enough for 50 for Rude Buster, but I got way more than I needed. So moving on to turn 2 here. A little miss menu from me there. I go for Rude Buster. Obviously, I hit the 156 from the damage enhancement that we talked about earlier. Now, turn 2. This move is a little bit complicated. So the way to go about dodging these that I do personally, and I see a lot of people make this mistake where they move around too much or too aimlessly. What you really want to do here is you want to make your movements as deliberate as possible. These blades will spawn at the 8, well, I guess 8 cardinal directions, if that makes sense. They spawn at the 4 cardinal directions relative to the soul, and also their diagonals. So, the 4 cardinal directions, so up, right, down, left, and then their 45-degree counterparts, and they will stick to the soul. As you can see here, like, this one is stuck exactly at this angle here. So what you want to do to dodge these is that when they are ready to fire, so they'll be red and they'll make a sound, and they'll, like, glow. All you do is you just move perpendicularly. You can just tap. You don't even need to be moving. You don't have to preemptively move. You can literally just tap the key. And as long as you move perpendicular to the angle that they're at, you'll always dodge it. But you can actually do more than that. As long as you don't move along this line, you'll be fine. So from this position right here, I have a whole bevy of options. The sword is going to go right to left. And I could, obviously I would move straight up here. If I was using slow soul or holding X, I have to move straight up. But because I'm not using slow soul, and I don't recommend using slow soul for this attack, you can move diagonally this way, diagonally that way, and up. I don't recommend going down here because it would catch me at the bottom, but normally if I was, like, up here, then I'd also be able to do the downwards directions. Just any direction that is away from this, basically. So in this case, I'm going to go up left here, and that's just going to dodge it. Now, I move a lot here because this attack is weird for me while the timing is slow. Once it speeds up and you get into the rhythm, I start just tapping instead. So right around here, I recognize, okay, this is going to go down. I go right. This one, I go this way. And you can even hug the box. Hugging the box is fine if you're moving perpendicularly from the sword. I'm going to touch the edge of the box here, and I'm still going to dodge the attack just fine. This one, I could go up left. I could go left. Either one will dodge this. And you can see I've switched to tapping now. All you have to do is just tap the direction. You don't have to make a big sweeping movement, and I recommend learning it this way because when this attack comes back, it will be harder, it'll have a circle around it, and it'll limit the amount of space you can use. So you really want to master this, getting good at it, not moving very much. You want to make your movements deliberate. All it takes is a tap because these are essentially hit scan projectiles. They are instantaneous, and they're over with super quickly. You just move right out of their way. So again, you just see it, and you move perpendicularly to whatever direction the sword is pointing in. And also the other angles work too. So just as long as you're not moving along the angle that the sword is pointing in. Just like that. It's super simple. Once you get the hang of it, that attack is like probably the most consistent attack in this entire fight. Once you get it down pat, There's no randomness. Once you get the movement down pat, it's like riding a bike. You never forget. If there's an Undertale Deltarune attack I can compare it to, oddly, this attack reminds me a lot of Zenith's Claws from Undertale Yellow. It's actually like freakishly similar. But in that regard, it's also super consistent once you get good at it. You just kind of have to like understand to go perpendicular from the way the blade spawns. You shouldn't even really be looking at the soul. You should just look at the blade, what direction it's pointed in, and just go perpendicular from there. You don't even need to look at where you are necessarily. So moving on to the next attack, I refer to this one affectionately as the Teeth Slash because it spawns what I like to describe as teeth. I don't really know what else you describe these as. So during Teeth 1, this attack is going to repeat a couple of times. During Teeth 1, the knight will pick a direction, horizontal or vertical, and will always slice down that direction during the first attack. During the second attack, it'll mix it up between the two. Only on the third attack, which we're actually going to skip with this setup, will it do diagonals. So what I recommend doing is always go to the bottom left. That's where I go personally. I don't like going to the top because the top of the battle box kind of bounces a little bit more. The bottom doesn't bounce quite as much. That doesn't actually affect your control at all. It's just a visual thing. But I recommend going to this bottom left-hand corner here. And depending on which way the knight is slashing, you're going to want to hug either the bottom or the left wall. In this case, it's a horizontal slash, so we're going to hug the bottom wall. If it's a vertical slash, I would hug the left wall. And I would sit about right here or right here, not quite in the corner, but like here or here. And the way I dodge this attack is that all of this, first of all, ignore everything going on the opposite side. That does not matter. Anything that's on the opposite side of you doesn't matter. And personally, I ignore all of this half of the attack. There's going to be 7 teeth, sometimes 6. But generally, you can divide it into 2 groups of 3, 1 in the middle, and then another group of 3. Disregard this group of 3 and just focus on these 3. Typically, unless you're very unlucky, this group of 3 teeth will always have a gap in it. So we're going to see here. Typically, what you'll see is 2 going slow and 1 going fast, or 2 going fast and 1 going slow. Either way, it's always going to produce a gap. And this group of 3 is always going to have one of these gaps present. You're not going to have to, I mean, sometimes you'll move over, but generally this group of 3, or if it was vertical, it would be here, will always have a gap for you to go through. So you can just focus on these. Ignore all of this. Get this out of here. Just lock in on these 3. You'll notice that's exactly what I do here. I go, and then I reset my position here, and I'm holding down to make sure I just hug the wall and tapping the directions to move. So I wait for the next slash. I look at the group of 3. I identify where I need to go. These are the 2 fast ones. This is the slow one. So I go through the gap. By the way, once these projectiles pass the green border, these will no longer do damage. So if you get flung into these will not be a problem. Ignore them. Once you're done dodging them, they're just not going to do damage to you. So I don't need to worry about that. Like if the knight bounced me into this, it wouldn't do damage. All right, group of 3 again. See, here's the gap. Go through it. There's the gap. Go through it. See how there's always a gap in that group of 3? You can just always look at that group of 3. In this case, I could have gone left and stayed in the group of 3, but I saw an opportunity on the right that was closer, so I went for it, and then I would go right back to my group of 3. And that's how I recommend dodging that attack. That's how I see it personally, and it works for me. I dodge that attack most of the time I do it. A lot of times it is gonna catch you. Don't get discouraged if you get hit a couple of times, because that is a very difficult attack. It took me a while to get that down. It's definitely one of the most threatening attacks in this fight. Speaking of threatening attacks in this fight, of course, next up is Sword Corridor, which this attack is probably the most difficult attack in the fight, in my opinion, at least to me. This attack trips me up a lot. And if you get hit by it, if you get grazed by it, just don't get overwhelmed, don't get discouraged, and just get right back on track, because this attack hits rapidly, but it doesn't do that much damage. So if you make a quick mistake, just readjust and you'll be fine. But the way I personally dodge this is that I am not really looking at the soul. I look over here to where I need to go, and you'll see, it's either up or down or straight. And then I will just tap up or down to move into those slots. My eyes are here right now. I'm not looking at the soul. I look here. So I see as they come, I need to move down. So it happens, down, up, and you can see me tapping just to like generally stay inside of these inside of the blade corridors. It is something you learn by feel. It's kind of difficult to describe, but I really do recommend looking over at the right. And once you get the feel for how much you need to tap to make the movements, it becomes a lot more consistent. Because the movements generally kind of follow a similar like pattern to each other. Like you'll always have to move by a certain amount, and once you get a grip for how much you need to tap the up or down key to move, then you'll do it. I don't recommend using slow soul. I recommend just tapping your arrow key rapidly with full speed soul until you're, once you get that like muscle memory, then this attack becomes a lot more consistent and manageable. It is not something you necessarily need to master. You're probably going to get goobed by it. You're going to get hit by it, and that's okay. It is a very difficult attack. It's difficult to get down pat. Don't get discouraged. If you get hit sometimes, don't get overwhelmed. Just like move back into the negative space and keep dodging. This attack really gets the better of you if you let it get the better of you. Because if you just get hit a couple of times, it's fine. You barely take any damage from this attack. It does like 20, but it hits you rapidly. So you gotta, readjust on the fly. Then the attack ends with this. This is the only unfair attack in the entire fight. These telegraphs, ignore them. These telegraphs, well, not ignore them, but they are thinner than the swords are. You need to go for spaces that look big. In this case, here and here would be the spaces I would use. Go for large spaces. Don't cut it close with this attack. You want to go to big open spaces. If you think you're safe in a smaller space, you're probably not. Even if like the line isn't touching you, these swords will peep out from their telegraphs and hit you, because for some strange reason, the telegraphs and the swords are not the same size. It is the only unintuitive and genuinely slightly unfair attack in this entire fight, in my opinion. I don't know why, and this might be patched at some point, but the telegraphs just don't match the swords. And it stands out like a sore thumb because the rest of this fight is incredibly fair or even lenient towards the player with hitboxes. For some reason, this one is the complete opposite, just this one attack. But in this case, you just want to go for a big negative space and just camp there. In this case, I go here. If I went like here, I'd probably get hit. If I went like here, I'd probably get hit. That is not safe right there. That is a bait spot. Don't go there. Look for a big open space. And it's also unfortunate because this is an attack you really do not want to get hit by. If you manage to do the skip for this by grazing enough, it is useful because this attack does a lot of damage. Like this will one-shot Shadow Mantle-less Chris and Ralsei and almost one-shot Susie. It'll put Susie at, I think it does about 170 damage to Susie, and it'll kill Chris and Ralsei if they're not defending and they don't have the Shadow Mantle on, or they don't have the Shadow Mantle on. It's ridiculous. This attack does so much damage, and it's the one attack in this fight that can be a little unfair. Like even there, I almost got goobed by that sword. Look how big the handle is compared to the telegraphs. I mean, it just doesn't. Yeah, this attack can get you. It will get you a lot. Don't feel ashamed if you get hit by this. It is very difficult, and it's tough to react in time, but once you get past it, we are moving on to greener pastures. This is one of the easier attacks in the fight. Starts off with this slash is kind of a tutorial of how this works. This one will always target the center. Now, from here on out, every single time the knight uses this move in the future or in the rest of this turn, the center of this cross slash will be on your soul. So what I like to do is I like to move kind of towards the top, let the slash start, and then move towards the bottom, because that means the negative space will be at its widest. It's kind of like, if you've played Risk of Rain 2, it's kind of like dodging Mithrix's pizza attack. Actually, it's really similar to that. But I move here, and then you notice I move down a bit to give myself wider negative space. I don't necessarily do it much on the first attack, because the first attack already has pretty wide leniences anyway. Having a pink ribbon on really makes you graze the hell out of this attack. This attack gives you a lot of TP when you graze it. But I feel like this one is pretty self-explanatory. Like, I don't think you necessarily need, like, pro advice to dodge this one. It's pretty self-explanatory. The really only big tip I can give is, again, the center of the cross slashes from all of them except the very first one will always be exactly... when the attack starts, it will be at the center of the soul. So you can set it up and then give yourself more space by going back and forth. I think I do that later in this fight, actually. Excuse me. Another Root Buster here, doing a lot of damage. I think I was actually one short. I think it's 164 there. Anyway, Starstorm 2 is basically exactly the same as Starstorm 1. There's just more projectiles, and sometimes they're large. I got like no large projectiles in this one, but some of them will be large. You can see the larger ones out here. As you see, these are the small ones. These are the larger ones. Exact same advice as the first time. Just look for a space to dodge. And I recommend Slow Soul is good here. By holding X, when there's a bunch of projectiles on the field, you can lock in and make small adjustments so you don't get hit by these guys, because you are like faster. So you'll probably, if you're full speed, you might just run right into these. They also don't do terribly too much damage. Another Root Buster here. Bang. Okay. Teeth 2 is basically... I mentioned this before. Now the knight will switch between doing horizontal and vertical. Same advice applies about the groups of 3. In this case, I see my group of 3. I go through. And then I reset to here. And then I see group of 3. I can already see this is the faster. These are the 2 slow. I mean, as soon as it spawns, you can tell that's the faster. These are the 2 slow. And I recommend, again, hold towards a corner because this will switch between vertical and horizontal. So this way, if you're like towards the corner, you'll always be ready for both. That might be bad muscle memory to develop for the later attack, but we skip the later attack by doing enough damage. And the later attack, you're going to want to, since I won't cover it here, but you'll want to hold slightly away from the corner in case the diagonals happen. My advice for that one is hopes and prayers, to be honest with you. It's pretty inconsistent. Group of 3, group of 3. There's the group of 3. Always in the group of 3s. Once you start seeing the little group of 3, you'll never unsee it, and that's how I always dodge it. Sword Corridor 2. This one kills people who overreact. Put on Slow Soul, so hold X for this, and make tiny adjustments. You are actually not going to move very much. The movement is going to look like this. It's in a little square. Don't over move here. It's, again, very small. Look at my adjustments. They're tiny. And it goes in a square. So you're going to go right, up, left, right, down, and then back to the right. And then the attack will end once the swords are basically flat like this. You can get goobed by this really easily, just like before. The best advice I have is just look for a big negative space. In this case, I go here. I could have, I could have gone for here, here, here. These are all unsafe. Again, pretend the lasers are thicker than they actually are. I don't know if this will ever be patched out or changed in any capacity. Right now, I think either making the swords smaller or making the telegraphs bigger would be good, but do not get baited by what appears to be a safe spot. These 3 appear to be safe. They are not. Go for this, go for that. Those are the only 2 I would even trust. Like, I would not trust this. You can't go here because the sword is present. I wouldn't trust that. Definitely wouldn't trust that. I would trust this. And that's where I end up going. I mean, look at that. I barely dodged that, despite the fact that I looked safe as hell just a minute ago. Isn't it crazy? Like, look how safe I looked, and then look how much space the swords cover. It's honestly ridiculous. All right, moving on to the next move here. If you've been following my strategy, this will be the last non-cross slash attack that you'll deal with. And this, a lot of people, including myself, I previously said I thought this was the hardest attack in the fight. I no longer think that, because this is really consistent if you do my strategy of just not making big moves and instead doing taps. So thankfully it starts off fast, which is good for me because I like getting into the rhythm. Again, if you just look, tap, 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 tap. Like, I'm barely making moves at all. That's what you want to do to get past this, because this sword circle will limit your movements. And my best advice is if you start getting close to the edge between attacks, you just readjust yourself a little bit towards the center. But generally, if you're not making big moves and you're just stay towards the center of the box, these will probably be a non-issue. In fact, they might even help you out with grazing a little bit. All right, now we're moving into the 2 last attacks here. This one will always be cross slash. This doesn't even matter. This is just what the knight is scheduled to use. As you can see, I'm doing the thing now. I'm setting it up, I go down, set it up, down, go up. I'm just like alternating directions to give myself the biggest negative space. So run that one back again so I can look at it again. So yeah, you see I go down, I let it set up on the lower end, and then I go up, and you see I have huge negative space. All right. And if you've been doing my method and you've been hitting all of your Rude Busters, this is the last turn now. It's going to repeat cross slash with the washing machine at the end. Exact same advice applies. Go up, go down. And once it sets up washing machine slash, you want to kind of follow this from a safe distance. The actual attack timing of this is slightly random, I think. I think the position is also slightly random, so it's not like the knight will always start when it gets perfectly vertical or perfectly horizontal, which is what I thought originally. That is not the case. I got goobed by that in a speed run one time and lost the run to it. I would just recommend following it from a safe distance. If you want to graze this, go ahead. I do because I'm flexing, but like you don't really. And then other than that, it's just a simple clockwise motion. Don't need to do anything other than that. If you've played Sans Undertale at any point in your life, this should be second nature to you. I think I no-hit this attack the very first time I saw it, and then I mocked it. If you've been doing my strategy and you've been hitting all my Rude Busters with the damage buff, you can just triple defend here. If you need to heal at all before the final, I would recommend doing it on this turn, as the knight will glow now because you've done enough damage. There is a chance that the knight, like I said earlier, that the knight will do the cross-slash attack again. That just means you need to do a tiny bit of extra damage. It means you're basically sitting exactly above the threshold to go to the glow attack, but you don't have quite enough damage. And I would recommend healing on this turn too, because you're going to want to defend while they glow for the maximum defense on the ultimate attack. Let's get into that. So ultimate attack is pretty difficult if you don't use hold breath. It's honestly one of the main reasons to use it. So imagine this, first of all, if you've played Undertale, it's like Hypergoner, except more fair. These have pretty lenient hitboxes, so you can go through them better than you expect. And honestly, it's just a matter of just finding gaps. Like right here, I basically work my way out from this. I don't go over to the corner all the way. I stay relatively close to the knight, and you'll see why in a moment. I try not to like alter my my position too much, because if I go too far out, it makes the next part of the attack really difficult. Unless you just want to eat that damage. You dodge like this for a while, and then you'll notice this on the side of your screens. Once you see this, once you see all the rapid stars coming in and the background's blue, you're going to want to head to the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And then you're just going to do a circle around the knight like this. It's actually kind of, it's like dodging the spin cycle attack, as I like to call it, in reverse, to be honest with you. Once you dodge this, I personally like going to the bottom left. You can go to the bottom right, top, any corner. I am a bottom corner fan, especially because the knight's center is not on the center here. You get more space if you're on the bottom left, so I go there. And then from here, again, the reason you want to be away from the knight is because it just gives these things more time to spread out. You have more time to react. You have more time to find the gaps. And once they start slowing down, go towards the knight. You don't want to end this attack right in the middle of the screen, because the slash the knight does hit you. But like right here is generally where you want to be, free real estate. And just look for a gap in the projectiles. And this is pretty simple to dodge. This can hit you, so be warned. But if you're anywhere like not right on top of the knight, you won't get hit. I mean, the slash hitbox is tiny. So, and that's it. That's my little guide there for doing the Roaring Knight fight. And you even get this exclusive no-hit dialogue if you manage to no-hit this fight, where Chris goes like, like wrap it up, you're getting cooked. This is base Susie we're dealing with here. You need a cutscene. Well, that's all I really have to say about the Roaring Fraud. I hope that you all have a great day or night, and that this guide helped you if you were struggling with this boss. And what the heck, I'll even throw in my no-hit in full here at the end. Enjoy! Let's fucking go, dude. Yes!